Hi everyone and welcome to the Curious Geographer for our last university interview, and what a great one it will be. We are joined by the University of Edinburgh. I'm going to hear all about their fantastic geography degree. If you haven't already, check out the QR code and everything that has come up this term, but this is our last interview, as I said, so very much looking forward to everybody who's joined. If you do have any questions, put them in the question comments on the side as well, that way. So today we are joined by Professor Nino and also Dr. Dan Swanton, and also a student from Edinburgh. And I love it when we're joined by students, we can actually really hear what it is like to study a geography degree. So I'm going to pass over to Professor Nino. If you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what your area of interest is and what's your role at the University of Edinburgh.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ellie. So my name is Pete Nino. I'm a glaciologist here at Edinburgh University, and my sort of area of research is glaciers and ice sheets, and really trying to understand how they're responding to climate. And I guess a little bit of background. So, I studied geography at school. It was my favourite subject. I went on to study geography at university. And both at school and at university, my favourite area not of research as it was then, but of learning was glaciers. But at that point, it was really just because I loved the mountains and the outdoors and found glaciers and ice sheets exciting. But I have to be honest, and I left school in 1983, I didn't think glaciers were particularly important. I just thought they were very, very sort of interesting and beautiful. And then when I did my degree, it was still the same. There was lots of talk about how glaciers wax and wane over glacial cycles, so sort of over 20,000 year cycles, and the alpine glaciers were retreating from the Little Ice Age. But there was absolutely no suggestion when I was an undergraduate that what we were going to see was the dramatic retreat of glaciers globally, forced by basically greenhouse gases and anthropogenic warming. And I think that that's the thing for me where I started doing geography and I started doing glaciology because of a passion for mountains and glaciers, but not because I thought they, in a sense, mattered. And so in one sense, my sort of career has been quite interesting because the longer my career has gone on, the more relevant and more topical it's become. And hopefully, if you're studying geography at school, and even if you're not interested in physical geography as much as human geography, you can't really miss the headlines, which are now pretty much being reported on a daily basis in the mainstream media in relation to climate change forcing wildfires, glacier retreats, sea level rise, increased rainfall, increased storm activity. And that's just something which, again, when I was an undergrad, you really needed a volcanic eruption or a big earthquake for sort of factors that are associated with physical geography to make the headlines. And so in one sense, that what I study, trying to understand in particular at the moment how Greenland is responding to climate, it's really fascinating. It's also in one sense sort of quite upsetting because you just see how much change is going on and how much change has actually gone on in my lifetime. But it's an amazing area to study. And I love it. And I guess one thing I'd really sort of point out is that I'm pretty certain, and Ellie will be able to correct me, but certainly with chatting to school teachers and seeing what my daughters are doing at school, glaciology and glaciers and landscape at school is very much still looking at moraines and pyramidal peaks and arêtes and corries, and you might go to the Lake District or Snowdona in the Scottish Highlands and look at these features, which are stunning. But at university now, really, there's much more focus on how a glacier is actually behaving now, what makes a glacier flow fast, what makes it melt more rapidly. Obviously, at the simplest level, if you increase the temperature, it melts. But it's the sort of more complex processes that are really what you start to look at university, and which is what I'm sort of teaching my undergrad. So we still go on field trips to the Cairngorms, but I try and put the landscape change there in a sort of more modern context. And I think I should stop.
Brilliant. And I completely agree that students also just sometimes don't study it enough, because I think sometimes teachers can be a bit put off as well, but it is really interesting. And as you said, it's becoming more and more important. that's how you kind of went into it, and now you, as you said, it's kind of becoming headlines. Well, it is headlines as well, like glacier change. Something which is really exciting, which I think Erin, who is our student, is also interested in. So we'll kind of talk to her about her perspective in a second as well. Should we pass over to Dr. Swanton? If you want to introduce yourself to us and let us know a little bit about your area of interest, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Ellie. And hi there, everyone. So my name's Dan Swanton, and I'm a cultural geographer, and I'm really interested in everyday life in cities. And so I guess kind of Pete started with that nice story of how he arrived at glaciology, and my story starts in my hometown, Leicester, and kind of growing up in a place that is pretty multicultural, but where kind of living with difference has been historically kind of difficult. And so those kinds of experiences growing up, going to school, really have informed a lot of work that I've done. So much more of my research and teaching focuses on northern mill towns, so places like Bradford, where living with differences seem to be going awry in some ways. And I'm really interested then in understanding what it's like to live in these kinds of places, the lived everyday experiences of the geographies of racism, and getting along more or less happily in places like Bradford. And then more recently still, this kind of interest has taken me to other places. I've been to Colombia in recent years, working on small towns in the Pacific region of Colombia, where the recent histories of conflict in Colombia have led to kind of huge amounts of displacement and are leading to difficulties of kind of sharing space in cities in Colombia. So again, the same interest in kind of questions of how we live with difference. And this or these kind of research interests really arc through my teaching as well in various kinds of ways. So I teach a course on cities where we're kind of very much looking at these questions of how we share space in cities, how we live together, how cities might look in the future. And then also some field trips where we get students doing bits of research in places like Berlin, kind of examining these kinds of questions, studying the everydayness of cities, which I guess is a key theme in lots of what I do here.
Brilliant. It'd actually be great to get you and Pete on actually to do maybe a little interview about your topic of interest, because loads of it links with what students are studying for A-level as well. We're super lucky also to be joined by Erin, who is a third year student at Edinburgh. So if I pass over to Erin, would you like to introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit about what you're studying at the moment?
Of course. So my name's Erin, and I'm a third year BSc Geography student at the University of Edinburgh. I'm a Scottish student, so I've come through the Scottish system and obviously now studying at Scottish University. As a third year student, it's become, prevalent throughout my years of studying that the interaction and both social, human and economic interaction with our environment and our physical components of our world is increasing in importance. My area of interests in terms of geography, especially as a physical geography student, is definitely more towards glaciation, as Pete had said, and volcanology, and how as humans, both anthropogenically and socially, we interact with such. And so.
Brilliant. And we're going to hear a little bit about your experiences at Edinburgh and kind of why you picked there. So if we go back to, I think, Pete, if you maybe start us off, the big question is, why should students study geography? But most especially, why should students study geography at Edinburgh?
Okay, so I'll start with the why geography, and then I'll pass over to Dan for the sort of why Edinburgh. But I mean, I think really my view, if you want to study a subject at university, is the best reason for choosing a subject is because it interests you most. So, I hope that, folk who would be sort of watching this or listening to this, you've got a real passion for geography, because I'd always say that, choose the subject that you're most interested to do at university. Don't let your teachers or your parents say, oh, you've got to become a lawyer and do if the idea bores you, or you've got to become a medic because that's such a sort of prestigious job. I really think the best reason for doing geography is because you've got a passion for it. And I certainly, as a subject area, I think, across the piece, it's fascinating. I'm sure as school kids you don't listen to the Today programme, and I kind of hope you don't, but if you do, you could pretty much guarantee that every single news item that's reported on the Today programme in the morning or on the BBC News at 6 p.m. or at 10 p.m, every single news item has got a significant geographic context. And the thing about geography, and it really is across the board, whether it's human geography or physical geography or the interface between the two, they have very, very sort of serious sort of global relevance across the piece. So as I say, what you name a topic, and it's got geographic context. You name a topic, there will be academics researching that. Even if you go to things like music or football, there are academics across the world looking at different aspects of, whole ranges of sort of culture, as well as what you might think the more typical sort of urban geography or environmental geography. So I think the key thing for me is, it's a fascinating subject, but again, it hasn't ever been more topical. It's really relevant. If we think of all the big sort of pressing issues at the moment, things like Brexit, things like COVID, we've got colleagues who research in those areas, work in those areas. We've got health geographers at Edinburgh. Climate, we've got people looking at a whole range of aspects to do with sort of glaciology, to do with meteorology, atmospheric science, sort of flooding. And it's really just, it covers this sort of spectrum of areas. And as a degree, when you turn up, the choice is extremely varied. So you might turn up thinking, I'm really into one particular area, but you can easily sort of move into another as your interests evolve, which might be as your own personal development, or you get a particularly interesting lecture in the first year. So I think that the breadth and relevance of geography and the spread of subject areas is a fantastic aspect of the degree. In terms of sort of touching on the Edinburgh bit, we also we really try and focus on research-led teaching. So when I'm giving lectures, I'm really talking about areas that I am carrying out the research in, so that I sort of feel I know about, and we actively avoid making people teach on areas that they don't have expertise on, because that really defeats the object of the exercise. So it's a really very much a sort of research-based educational experience. We've got academics in place who are talking about their real knowledge. Other issues about why geography, I mean, it's great fun. As degree subjects go at university, it's extremely sociable. Obviously, at the moment with COVID, things are slightly different, but normally we've got lots of field trips, and that adds enormously to the enjoyment of a degree experience, because you really get to know not just your sort of cohort, but you get to know academic staff, and it's just a totally different level of interaction with other individuals doing your degree compared with someone doing history or maths, and that that is absolutely fact. I've seen that all the way through, both as an academic but also as an undergrad. So the sort of the social side is tremendous, but it really comes through the field trips and the interactions that they provide, whilst of course also being educational. And then the final thing in terms of if you're thinking sort of going forward, with your degree, the sort of the job and career prospects of people doing geography degree are just extremely varied. So people go into a sort of whole range of things, from what you might call sort of generic jobs in the in the sort of city, so the sorts of things, marketing, banking, finance, that people do from a range of degrees. But then more geographic specific degrees, there's in lots of jobs increasingly in environmental work. I'm sure in the next few decades increasingly in things like sort of green energy, environmental consultancy, welfare, sort of overseas aid, and then of course if research is or teaching is your real thing, then clearly still plenty of people go into sort of research and teaching. But I think if you look at the sort of job prospects and what jobs geography graduates do, really with the exception of kind of, let's say, medicine, there's pretty much no jobs that they don't even do it. And people, even law, people do sort of conversion course at the end. The point is, all it does is, I would say, expand your sort of career options as you sort of go through. So that's why I do geography. And the key thing, which links to the filter, it's fun. If you can't have fun doing a geography degree, don't go to university.
I definitely agree that it doesn't limit you. I actually have two friends who studied geography with me at university, one who is now a doctor and one who is a lawyer. So you can still also go in and do that, which you said. So it really, really doesn't limit you at all. And it just opens doors, which is brilliant. And I definitely agree with that fun part. Dan, can we pass over to you? Why do we think students should study geography, but particularly, therefore, at Edinburgh?
So, I mean, I guess that this will maybe overlap with some of the things that Pete says, but I'll focus a little more on the Edinburgh side of things. And I think I really agree with what Pete was saying around kind of geography being so relevant, but about this fundamental curiosity about the world around us. And I think we're really kind of well placed to do this in Edinburgh. I think we have a relatively large department, and it's not always that kind of big is best, but actually what that means is that we have quite a lot of expertise in lots of different areas. And so I think one of the things that you get in Edinburgh is a breadth and that kind of capacity to shape your degree around your interests. And part of that is the structure of the degree here in Edinburgh, and we'll maybe talk about that in a little bit. But I think certainly when it comes to the third and fourth years, there's huge amounts of scope for really sculpting or crafting your degree around the things that you're most interested in. So if it's glaciology, then there are options that you can take. There are field trips you can go on. But similarly, if your interests are in cultural geography or in health geography, then you can kind of focus your degree around those interests too. And Pete's already mentioned that we kind of do lots of research-led teaching, and we also have lots of people leading in kind of pedagogical research as well. So kind of research on how students learn geography at university as well. So I think we have some kind of amazing colleagues who are really at the vanguard of what they do in research and teaching, and that's what your day-to-day will be, whether it's in a lecture theatre, whether it's on a field trip, that you'll get the opportunity to work alongside these people. I think another thing that Pete mentioned is that geography is fun, it's collaborative, it's pretty social. And I think we've worked really hard to kind of nurture good relationships with our students. We have a great student society, GeoSoc, here in Edinburgh. They've just been shortlisted for a student society national prize. So they're kind of furiously trying to get votes so that they win that prize. But I think that just kind of points to the way in which they work really hard to create a really nice sense of community around the geography program as well. So that's maybe kind of why geography in Edinburgh is good. Of course, we're also located in a really prestigious university. It has a great reputation. It's one of the top universities in the world, and it's a big institution that has lots of resources. So no matter what your interests are beyond academic studies, there are kind of things that you can get involved with and do around the institution. And I'll maybe kind of skip over the rest of the stuff around the institution and then really kind of focus on the city of Edinburgh as well, which I think is just an amazing place to be. I've lived in Edinburgh now for 11 years, and I can't imagine living anywhere else, certainly in the UK anymore. It's an amazing city. This year's, as Pete mentioned, kind of the pandemic's really made us shift how we teach and how we have done field trips this year. But we've been so lucky to be based in such an incredible place to live and study. So we've had students out in the city doing lots of bits of field work or kind of traveling to places that are pretty close by, whether it's in East Lothian on the coast or in towards the borders where it's a little more hilly, and the kind of highlands are not that far away. So it's an amazing place to live and so many fascinating things to study in and around the city as a geographer. So that's certainly something we're kind of looking to boost in the degree.
Lots of us on here. So fantastic, thank you. And now we're just going to pass over to Erin. It'd be great to hear about why you picked geography. So you were in your third year, so going back to when you were doing your final exams at school. So what was kind of going through your mind? Was there anything in particular that you really wanted to study there? Can you tell us a little bit about your experience on applying?
Of course. So going through school, geography was my favourite subject. I had a clear focus in physical geography, and when learning about hydrology and river systems and particularly glaciology at school, captivated. I knew at that point, kind of going into higher and advanced higher exams, that was what I wanted to study at university. And once visiting Edinburgh and the School of Geoscience through an open day, it was was in a university that it was kind of my goal. It was the end point of where I wanted to be. Geography at Edinburgh is so inclusive. Not only is the city that we study in culturally and ethically diverse, the courses in which that you can either compulsory or optional courses throughout the 4 years of the degree can be tailored to suit your interests and your needs. And I think personally that's been a really, really like high point, because you can basically tailor your degree and what your interests are from the beginning, or you can kind of go over a more broad kind of scope, and then as you progress into the honours years, then finalise down and kind of tie down the areas of interest that you're particularly kind of fond of. And just Edinburgh in general is got the best staff, not being biased, the best staff, the student atmosphere environment, as Dan had said. Shout out to GeoSciences, one of the best societies in the university for not only its social side of things, but the academic help that they provide and the overall atmosphere. That's something that most geography students will praise. And also just the opportunities for the interaction between staff and students. That's something that I'm quite fond of Edinburgh, because not only are you making interactions with fellow students and, kind of building what Pete had said, it's very inclusive and everybody knows everyone and everybody's willing to help, but also this new concept of networking and being able to then adapt as you go through your university and your university years, and then move on to a career path that you feel comfortable with or that you feel excited for, and you'll be able to then have contacts throughout. So yeah, most definitely would recommend Edinburgh, but again, not being biased.
Brilliant, thank you for that. So let's kind of go on to a bit about the structure, and then Erin, if we can find out a little bit about maybe like what you have focused on as well. So then, Pete, are you going to start us off? So studying geography, for those who are not living in Scotland, it's a bit different. There's 4 years usually, and you kind of get a broad range of kind of study in that kind of first year as well, before maybe specialising. But for students who don't really know much about the system, or just want to know more about what it's like to study geography at Edinburgh, can we have a bit of an overview over what the opportunities that Edinburgh offers, because the course looks fantastic.
Okay, do you want to share, is it worth sharing that PowerPoint slide now, or?
Yep.
Or anyway, I'll start talking, and then so as both Ellie and Erin point out, I mean, there's quite a big difference between a Scottish degree and a degree at an English university. And so the first obvious thing is a typical undergrad degree at Edinburgh or any Scottish university is a 4-year degree. So that's an additional 1 year over a sort of typical English degree. But then also the other thing, so for example, my experience, which I think is still pretty common, when I went to university to do a degree in geography in England, I arrived in my sort of first week, and I basically did geography for 3 years. And just like Erin has and anyone does, as you move up through the years, you start to specialise. But it was all geography courses within the geography building in the geography degree programme. Whereas in Scottish universities, and Edinburgh being no exception, what happens is that in your first and second year, there's a much broader spectrum of choices. So, for example, for our geography degree, if, for example, you're doing the MA, there's just there's 3 compulsory courses in your first year of basically 6 possible courses. So 3 of your courses you can do outside the geography program. So if you come in your, let's say, particularly interested in, I don't know, but sort of, let's say physical geography, but you want to look at something more to do with the sort of different type of geology or meteorology or ecology, those are courses which are offered within the School of GeoSciences, which is the sort of the broader school that geography is based in, but not specifically by geography teaching staff such as Dan and myself, so that you can sort of really broaden your expertise, but within, let's say, a sort of specific area of kind of physical geography in its broadest sense. But say you want to come in, but actually what you really want to do is, you might be really good at maths and you want to keep doing, or some other sciences. You might choose to do a course externally in science, or you might be very good at languages and you decide you want to keep up your French or your Spanish or whatever it is. You can do a course in that. You want to try something completely new. You decide you might want to do something in archaeology or in sociology or in pretty much a range of subjects. You can imagine at the size of a university such as Edinburgh, there are so many different courses, and the point is you've really got the opportunity, without many exceptions, to choose from this range of different areas. And basically what happens, the Scottish system or the Edinburgh system, you have 120 credits per year. So in your first year, 60 of those credits are basically in geography, 60 you can choose outside courses, which can be close to geography or can be very distant. Second year, it's pretty much the same. And then once you get to third and fourth year, that's when you really are focusing far more specifically on your sort of geography courses. So most people do just geography courses in their third and fourth year using those 120 credits. But even in third and fourth year, there's actually still the possibility to do one 20 credit outside course. Almost no one does, because they really focus in their honours years on the sort of geography programme. But so the absolute key is this system, and Edinburgh within that is based on this model that you can try other interests in first and second year before you really focus in your third and fourth year, and you can choose to use those options either to really hone your expertise in one particular area, or to actually dabble or try something very new. And just occasionally people try something new that they haven't tried before and actually really start to specialize in a sort of totally new area, and sort of sociology, or focusing in something that they really haven't touched on at all at school. And that really is I would say the big difference between the Scottish university system full stop and the English one. It's that breadth of choice.
I also have the MA. Are we going to talk about that one as a slide?
I mean, I can say just a couple of things, maybe less specifically about the MA, but maybe to build on what Pete says, and maybe focus on the third and fourth year. And I think, as Pete says, you get that breadth and that opportunity to study broadly in Scotland in your first 2 years. But then by the time you reach your third and fourth year, you're really becoming more specialist in geography. And so between the MA and the BSc, we have these two distinct pathways where we're training you to be a geographer and a physical scientist on the BSc. And you'll have research training and field trips that are giving you the skills in specific techniques that will allow you to become an independent researcher by your fourth year with the dissertation. And this is what Erin will be doing at the moment, is kind of some of the courses preparing her for doing some research, hopefully over the summer, if we're allowed out and to do these kinds of things next summer. Whereas on the MA side, then you can focus on social science and humanities research, and then also you're taking courses that are really shaped around your interests. So we currently have about 28, I think, options for our third and fourth year students, and over the course of those 2 years they'll take 4. So they're really quite specific options, and they should be really the things that you're most curious and passionate about. So you really have the opportunity to shape and craft your degree around what you want to study.
I've just muted myself, just so everybody knows. I just asked Erin if she could just tell us what her first couple of years were as an overview. That'd be fantastic, Erin. Right, go for it.
So as I said, I am a BSc student who's now in third year. So I'm just about halfway through, probably a wee bit more than halfway through my degree. Geography at Edinburgh Edinburgh in general. In first and second year, it's very broad, as Pete said. There's lots of room to kind of study or find interest that you maybe didn't know you had before you came to university. And I think that's an excellent opportunity that's given to us, especially because you're not confined to something that you maybe, it gives you kind of room to move and freely kind of decide what direction you would like to go in, and which is particularly important because the course has 4 years. You have pre-honours and honours. So in first year, I actually have stuck mostly to physical geography and natural sciences because obviously that's my area of interest. So I've kind of got a wee list here. So in first year, they're basically a human and physical geography course. And then you've got like a key methods course that kind of talks about the more research and qualitative and quantitative side of geography, which is possibly touched upon at school, but again, it's not really something that's mentioned until you get into kind of further education, but it's very, very exciting. And then for my kind of optional courses, I took a course talking about oceanography. It was the physical, chemical and biological components of how the water system works across the Earth. Another course was natural hazards, which was talking about the kind of geology and geophysics side of volcanic eruptions and hazard perception, which is something that might interest students that necessarily. Some of the other courses I've been to second year, there's kind of a wider variety in terms of geography in general. So as kind of Dan had said earlier, there is everything that we do has geography, and that's maybe not something that's touched upon enough in school. It wasn't until coming to university that you realise that everything has a geography. There's geography of gender, of race, of health, of a wide range of topics, and that's something that's really, really interesting. So there was economic and political geography that kind of delved down into the social and economic side of geography, and then there was cultural geography talking about things like food, geographies of food and geographies of health when you get into your kind of honours years. And lots of courses for a wide variety of interests, and that's something that the geography department and the School of Geoscience in general tend to encourage you to explore, especially in your pre-honours years, because it's the perfect time to do so, to find your ground and find the space that you want to then proceed the rest of your degree in. So would highly recommend. And moving towards honour years, as I mentioned, I have an interest in glaciology and volcanology, so I've kind of tailored my degree, especially in moving forward into fourth year next year, for the more quantitative side of research in terms of ice sheets and volcano processes and volcanic systems in general. So yeah.
Brilliant. I think we're next going to talk about fieldwork, but if you, I don't know, Erin, if you have, obviously this current year is difficult for fieldwork and we can't really travel many places, but have you been able to go on any fieldwork yourself? And if you could go on fieldwork like next year for your research, is there anywhere that you would like to go?
So geography at Edinburgh has probably the widest range of field trip options available to undergraduates, especially going straight in. So in my first year, within 3 weeks, I had been on a field trip. They chuck you straight in there, and that's the best way to be, because as we said, it builds this like social interaction between students and also the staff there. So I've actually been on a few. There's a few that obviously have had to be postponed or rearranged due to the pandemic, but that's just something that I feel like everybody's just going to have to adapt to. So in first year, you kind of go on like the key methods field trip. We go to Condrogan and you learn field, kind of get a grasp for what the basis is for the degree, and it's also a really good opportunity to meet other students. And kind of find your ground, which I think is something that can be quite intimidating for students to it can come across as quite intimidating to go on a field trip within your first 3 weeks, but it was one of the best decisions made at the University of Edinburgh to then change it and, you know, go on this field trip. And I went on a week-long field trip to Snowdonia in Wales last summer. And again, the field trip opportunities that Edinburgh provide are just top standard. You couldn't better. Not only are you learning field techniques and how to apply your expertise, research, your teaching staff research in the field and learning the technologies that come with it. You are interacting with the natural environment, which is a bonus, and you're also interacting with people that love geography as well. So that's always a plus.
Brilliant. It sounds like you've been on, you have done a fair bit of field work already, which is quite fantastic. To give us a bit of an overview, maybe for other field works, because obviously not all students will kind of go through that same pathway. Edinburgh looks like they do a range of amazing different fieldworks. I've got some images here of places they go. Pete or Dan, would either of you be able to tell us a little bit more about the fieldwork that Edinburgh offers?
Do you want to do that, Dan, for the human?
Yeah, I
side, which is a bit different from Erin.
Yeah.
In physical.
So, I mean, I guess as Erin said, like one thing we've tried to do is introduce like a spine through each year of the degree with some fieldwork opportunities, and I think that's really because we want to emphasise the importance of experiential learning. So, kind of getting outside of a classroom, a lecture theatre, getting out there in the environment, whether that's a city or in Snowdonia up the mountains or on glaciers in Iceland, and learning in the field by doing and working alongside other students, but also kind of my colleagues. And so I think the first year field trip is really that kind of taste, and the most important thing that comes from that field course, I think, is the time that students get together right at the beginning of their degree. I think that transition to university is one that can be challenging. You're meeting lots of new people, and it's really nice to build a sense of cohort and a sense of community on the program by getting everyone away really early on in their degree. So then on the MA side, the next field trips come usually at the beginning of the third year. And we have a couple of field trips to Cape Town and Athens at the moment. So students are going away for 8 to 10 days, spending time in these cities, learning in the field about all kinds of things. It might be about the impact of the refugee crisis or graffiti in Athens, and kind of the urban visual culture and kind of what's going on in that city. In Cape Town, it might be the legacies of apartheid. On the city, kind of issues of development in the Cape Flats or something like that. So really getting to learn about fascinating issues in amazing cities and kind of being taught by amazing folk. And then towards the end of the degree, so at the beginning of the fourth year, our students then have other fieldwork opportunities. So these are really about advanced training in specific research techniques. And the BSc students, so the physical geography students, go to Iceland, where they're studying glaciers and tephra layers, and which are kind of layers of volcanic deposits. And on the human geography side, we have trips that go to Berlin at the moment. So that's one I usually go on, and unfortunately couldn't go on in September. And another trip that goes to the Western Isles. So out to the Western Isles in Scotland, studying kind of rural communities and island communities in Scotland.
Yeah. They all look so good, and it's quite far away as well. So Iceland and Cape Town as well, but then also more local, well, kind of within Europe and within the UK as well. So really, really fantastic range. We've got a question that's come through from Emma on if one of you wouldn't mind seeing if you can answer this. I know it's fine, you might have to direct her to the website, I'm not sure. But one question from Emma saying is, how competitive is applying to geography at Edinburgh? So kind of I think it's kind of like how many people apply to how many people get offers potentially. I'm not sure if you know that information.
So I don't know whether Dan. So I don't know the numbers of offers, applicants to offers. I know that it's quite competitive in terms of it's sort of up there with, you could imagine, competitor to institutions, places such as sort of Bristol, Durham, St Andrews, the London universities, the sort of Oxbridges. It does, it attracts a lot of applicants. I'm afraid I absolutely don't know what the ratio is of applicants to places. I don't know, Dan, whether you...
Not off the top of my head, Pete, no. I mean, I guess, as you say, it's relatively competitive, but I mean, we do take quite a large number of students each year as well. So we typically have cohorts arriving of, I think it's kind of nearly 140 students started in September. So whilst there are lots of applicants, there's a relatively large program too. So I mean, I think kind of these things are often about where you feel comfortable applying, kind of where you're attracted to as a place, as a department, and coming and speaking to us as well at open days is a good opportunity to get that feel for a place, and then you also get the opportunities to talk to people in admissions who have a much clearer sense of the proportion of applicants that get offered, the proportion of applicants to the number of people who actually take place.
Brilliant. There's another question, and if anybody else does have any questions, just put them in the comments on the side. Saying, how likely is it that you'll be able to do geography as an outside course? So if you originally apply to different subjects, such as physics, I mean, my answer to that is, why aren't you applying for geography? But can students who study different subjects, are they able to do it as their option choices?
Definitely they can, although because we have quite a big undergraduate program, so there are restrictions on the number of people we can teach in one class. So I've just been a human geography course, and Pete will be able to tell you about the first year physical geography course that he'll teach after Christmas. And I think we have 230 students on that course, but about 140 of those are our geography students. So the spaces are restricted just because the size of the lecture theatres when we can be in those is restricted. So there's a limit to the number of people we can teach at any one time.
But basically,
it's definitely an option.
But basically, in the early years, in first and second year, so for the physical geography course that I teach on next semester, which is, as Erin mentioned, one of the compulsory courses for the geography undergrads. Yes, basically about a third, about just over a third of the students who do it are not doing geography courses. So they're from arts and sciences, both sort of maths and physics and languages, according to their interest. Moving for, and that's the same in second year as well. So, for example, the second year physical geography courses such as geomorphology, there will be people who will be choosing that who are completely out with not just geography but out with the School of GeoScience. What I'm not sure about, and that's something that you'd have to check, physics is your main degree. I don't know whether somewhere like physics lets you do 20 credits in your third and fourth year in an outside course. So, for example, I mean, I would love to have people who do maths and physics doing my glacial course in third and fourth year, and in fact, in sort of recent years, quite a few of my sort of best PhD students are people who've actually done maths or physics degrees and then come in to do a PhD in glaciology, because once you get to the sort of research level, actually a really good understanding of maths and physics is just totally invaluable. But so if I possibly could get people doing maths and physics to do my options, I totally would. But what you'd have to check, and I just simply don't know, is whether the 20 credit flexibility that we have in geography for outside courses in honours years in the other degrees. But that information should be available within the degree programme. But yeah, if you do physics, come to Edinburgh, do physics, and then come and do glaciology. Glaciologists need you.
And if students do want to find kind of extra information, where can they go to find that out? Pete or Dan?
Should I go, Pete?
Yeah, you go.
Okay, so the University of Edinburgh has a degree finder, and so if you go to the undergraduate bit of the degree finder, I think I popped a link in, Ellie, so you can then find the pathway through the degree, and then there's also a series of joint honours degrees, so geography with other subjects that you could study. I think another really nice resource is the School of GeoSciences, so alongside other undergraduate degrees in earth sciences and ecology and environmental sciences, and they have a series of social media reps, so they're kind of posting and they're quite active on Instagram as well. So just something of the kind of student experiences of doing a degree, what it's like to be a first year geography student, fourth year geography student. And I think that probably gives you a really nice sense of another side of the degree and what the experience might be like of our current students.
Brilliant. And I always think it's great following like social media, whether that is Instagram, because I think there's just so much going on, and also can really help students as well with their subject knowledge when they're in A level. So a really good thing to follow. Brilliant. Well, I mean, that kind of comes to the end of our questions. I mean, are there any final things, kind of one-liners, Erin, kind of one thing students should really definitely do, definitely pick Edinburgh as a choice, just to kind of end our kind of meet with Edinburgh this evening. So Erin, can I start with you, and then we can just go round?
Yeah. So geography for me is something, especially if you're going to do it at a university level, I would definitely say that you have to have a passion, not only for studying at a level higher than just, high school, but you have to have a passion whether that be the physical side or the human side, as I said, a passion for the environment or a passion for social interaction within a space. You have to have an interest. There's no point going to and this is something that was said to me when I was going through school. There's no point going to university unless you're going to do something that you enjoy or you have an interest in. You will not find it engaging if you're going to study something that you're being forced to study, especially if, students who have high grades, they're kind of forced into a path that they might not necessarily want to be in. And speaking from experience, that is not the way to go. If you have an interest in something, you have to fight for that interest. And if that is geography, then woohoo! But most definitely would say that geography as a whole is probably one of the best degrees out there, not only for the careers that it can lead you to afterwards, but again, from a slightly biased opinion, the actual components of both the degree and the university life is just top standard. So
brilliant. Dan?
Oh, I was going to go on a very similar theme. I think it's so important to pursue what interests you, what your fascinations or curiosities are. And I think this is such a difficult kind of decision to make, and it often feels that there's a lot of pressure on this decision. But I don't think you go far wrong by sticking with something that really gets you fired up and gets you out of bed in the morning and curious about learning more. And so I think kind of what Erin says is great. I think also when you're kind of making decisions about where you want to study, I think it's great to go visit the places if you have an opportunity, get a feel for the city you're going to be in, what kind of campus the university is, a feel for the people in the place, like kind of like what your lectures are going to be like, the buildings and spaces that you'll be studying in. And I think they can all really help you kind of form that decision, which kind of feels like a big step. But if you feel comfortable in the place and you're excited about kind of the place that you might be living and studying, then I think that's all the better, and it does make the decision a little bit easier, I think.
And finally, Pete?
Well, I guess there's not a great deal to add there. I'd say if you're going to come to Scotland for geography, the best reason to not just Edinburgh but any of the Scottish universities, the best reason is that breadth that you get. If that's something that attracts you, then a Scottish university is a really great place to come, because you do more than just 3 years of narrow geography, which is what you do in a uni down south. So the breadth is a real sort of particular thing that Scottish universities offer, Edinburgh included. But the other thing I'd then say, really, for me, so I moved to Scotland in 1994. Having lived in the south of England and the Midlands for the rest of my life, and I moved here solely because I loved the city. I'd visited the city a few times, amazing time, sort of socially in the city. Access to the coast and the hills and the great outdoors was just incomparable with what you can get sort of down south, because there's just so much more space. So I basically moved to Edinburgh not for work actually, but because of what I could do outside work, and I still love the city. And I really think I can genuinely say I don't know any undergrads who've been in Edinburgh and not loved it. And the one thing I do know is lots of undergrads, when they come to finishing, and the same with my PhD students, they're kind of frustrated. It's like, where am I going to go? Because I really want to stay in Edinburgh, because it's such a nice place to live and study and to live in. And so many of the sort of former undergrads and PhD students to try and get back here, because it's such a great place to live. Because in reality, wherever you go to university, you're going to have a fun time, but you can just have a little bit more fun here.
Nice. I like that. You'll have a fun time, but you'll have more fun here. Well, thank you so much for taking your time to tell us all about the fantastic kind of offers degree that offers at the University of Edinburgh. And also, yeah, I agree that the city is beautiful, and I know people who have lived up there, and it is a fantastic place to be and live. So if you could study there for 3 or 4 years, make it an excellent place like Edinburgh with a fantastic department. If there are any other questions that come in, just everybody watching, I will pass these on to University of Edinburgh, so I'll get the comments to be answered for you. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll have lots of applications. Actually, one of my students from last year has started in Edinburgh as well, so from personal experience, I think she's really enjoying it. And I'll just let my students know what's coming. My viewers know that there are no more live interviews coming up this term. So have a very lovely Christmas. But there are all of these which are now online. So thank you, a massive thank you, obviously, to the University of Edinburgh, but for all our other 12 universities who have done a live interview with us this term, telling us about their department, and all of our other guests too. We've had lots online, so definitely check those ones out if you want to find out more, or just extend your subject knowledge on different things. But from me, have a lovely Christmas. We'll be back in the new year with some different live interviews, and yeah, that's everything from me so far. Okay, bye.